All right. Hello, everybody. This is Emily Sollenberger speaking. I'm here with Laura Weiss. We are the program directors for Art Services, and we are going to walk through the FY25 GFO Financial Table and financial statements and what you need to know just for the on-year and the off-year applications. So this is applicable to anybody who's applying for FY25 GFO funding. And we're just going to walk through some kind of tips and tricks and what to expect, all in all, just to provide some further support to you all as you're going through the application process. So with that, we're going to go through the types of financial statements and requirements that we're looking for, along with walking through the financial table. Again, what we're looking for in the financial table, what you need to input into that from your financials, and a little bit about the financial scoring, which is only applicable to our on-year applicants, but it's good to know just so for future reference, you know what we're looking for. So to start off here, the financial statements should reflect your last completed fiscal year. So what that means is we're looking for a completed full year of income and expenses that are closed out from the previous year. So if you're an organization that operates on a calendar year, we're looking for your calendar year 2022 financial statements. That would be your last completed fiscal year at the time of your application this fall in November 15th or December 15th. If you're an organization that operates more of a traditional fiscal year, say with a June 30th end date, we'd be looking for your FY23 financial statements. So again, these should be finalized documents that are signed and authorized by your fiscal staff or board, or potentially audited by an independent auditor or CPA firm. I'll also note here that we probably have some folks that are considered arts programs applying for funding as well. So that would be folks that are, you might be representing a program of a university or a college, perhaps your a non-arts organization mission, but you do have significant arts programming. You will have an extra step here. In addition to audited financial statements for your full organization, what we're really looking for here is an arts program statement. So that would be reflecting your income and expenses for your arts-based programming only. So not the full statement for your organization that would include non-arts things, really those arts-based activities and income and expenses. Additionally here, when you're thinking about the type of financial statement that you're preparing for the FY25 application, there's two categories, and they're split by your allowable income number at the 600,000 mark. So if your total allowable income is under 600,000, we'd be looking for your most recently completed fiscal financial statement that would be something like a profit and loss statement, something that shows your income and expenses and that's accounted for from your organization, but signed by your professional accountant, or again, the organization's fiscal officer. This does not need to be an audited financial statement. If you've got that, great. But in terms of what's actually required, if you're under 600,000, it would just need to be an internal, finalized, signed, authorized statement. If your income is over $600,000, you would be required to submit an audited financial statement. So that would need to be produced by an independent external audit prepared by a CPA firm. And again, should be completed from your last fiscal year. There's also a note here on this slide that we understand that a lot of folks are perhaps in the middle of your auditing process and they might not be finalized by your November 15th deadline, or even December 15th if you're applying for an off year. If that's the case for you all, please let either Laura or myself know so we can make a note of that. And then you have up to March 1st, 2024 to provide that completed audited financial statements to us. In addition to the financial statement itself, you're also required to fill out a financial table within the application. In the financial table, we're looking for you to essentially pull out your income and expenses and put them into a chart or a table that's built into the application process. So again, we're looking at kind of pulling out that information from your last completed fiscal year and that financial statement that you're providing. Within the table, we're looking for clear notes and instructions so we can connect the various lines within the financial table to the information in your financial statement or your audit. Where to find that in your application. So if you open up your draft, you might have started to complete the program details for your narrative questions. The next tab over is the financial information. So when you open that particular tab, you're going to be asked about your fiscal year, your last completed fiscal year, and what you're providing to us. And then you'll also see that blue button that says financials. That's the financial table that's required to be completed. That when you click that button, it'll be a pop-out window, if you will. So it's not built into the actual application, it'll pop out. So it's a separate window for you to complete with all of that income and expenses. And it'll look something like this on your screen. So you'll have your instructions at the top around the fiscal years and how to utilize the table itself. But you'll see here, this is the earned income section, and there's other income and expenses sections as well. But you'll see the red arrow is pointing to a plus sign button. That's where you'll kind of add your types or your categories of funding, and then it'll populate. So for this particular example, you'll see the tuition was populated, and they put in the number and the associated line or where to find it in their financial statement attached. So you'll go through this as you can and add the categories or types of funding that's connects to your particular financial statement. So what we do, Laura and I, when we're reviewing the financial table and your financial statement, which we do for every organization, we're really looking to match the table to the corresponding financial statement just to verify those numbers in the table. So our first look is at the table itself, and then we utilize the financial statement for that verification piece. We do need to account for every numerical figure in the table, so we have to locate where that is in your statement. So we're kind of cross-referencing each piece here. And we're looking for the totals to align, and that's really how we verify the total allowable income figure, which is one of the 3 variables within the funding formula. And we'll get to that at the end here as well. But that's really what our ultimate goal is, to make sure it's accurate and verified, and that the funding that's distributed is in alignment with actuals. And the more notes that we have about this to make those connections, the better it is for us. So that way we don't have to come back to you with any additional questions. And I'm going to pass it to Laura to talk a little bit more about the sections.
Thanks so much, Emily. So there are 3 income sections that are in the chart or the financial table that you're going to complete. And those correspond to a couple slides back. Emily shared the screenshot of what that first section looks like, which is the allowable earned revenue section. To the right on the slide, you're going to see the different categories that fall under the allowable earned revenue. Those include admissions and ticket sales and memberships, and you can read all the way down to the bottom of that list. It is important to note that you might not use all of these categories. You might not have tuition for your organization, as an example. So if you don't have it, you just skip that. You don't put that in. You don't hit the little plus sign that Emily showed you a few slides ago and add tuition. You would just skip that if that is not something that your organization has. It is important to note, just as something that we do notice every now and then, if you accidentally choose one of the categories multiple times within the section, you are going to get an error message. So if you're going through and you put ticket sales at the top, and then you're doing all the other categories, and then you hit ticket sales again at the bottom and try to add another amount, it's going to give you an error message and won't let you submit it. So that's just kind of a helpful hint. Make sure you only select each category once within that particular section of the chart. The next slide is going to show you allowable contributed revenue. And this is the same kind of situation. This is the second of the three income sections in the chart to complete. Again, you're just going to select the ones that are utilized within your organization. So if you don't have an NEA share, for example, you would just skip that. There are some important things to point out within the contributed section regarding restricted income. So allowable income released from restriction is considered an allowable contributed revenue source. So you would want that to show up somewhere within this section. You sort of have two options of how to account for that. And that is either you can show the releases within the appropriate category. So if you have $50,000 from a foundation, for example, that is being released from restrictions, you could put that into the foundation line itself and put a very descriptive note in there to explain exactly what's going on, that includes the release from restriction. Or if you prefer, you can simply put the full sum that is being released from restrictions in this allowable income released from restrictions section itself. And then again, you would want to include some notes so we understand what was being released from restrictions, anything that we need to know about that particular scenario, just so that we understand how you're getting that total and how it is reflected here in the table. The next section here is non-allowable contributed income. This is the last of the three income sections. You'll see that there are a couple of different non-allowables. These have been consistent over the years: loans and carryovers and transfers of funds from endowments, etc. Again, if you don't use these categories or they're not applicable to your organization, you can just skip them. It is really important to point out, though, that we do have two things that are new to the non-allowable contributed income section. One is the FY23 Arts Relief Funding, round 1 and or round 2. This is considered non-allowable contributed income. So if you received an Argos grant or grants last year, this should go into this section as non-allowable income. Very similarly, if you received FY23 special request funds from us, that is also considered non-allowable. So if you received a special request grant, this would go into this category as well. Another thing to just point out, and this has been the case for a couple of years, but we do want to make sure that we highlight it, is that restricted income is considered non-allowable. So if you have any kind of restricted income by time, not necessarily by program or purpose, this would go into this section here. Once it's released from restrictions in the future, it would show up like we talked about in the previous slide. But for right now, if it is restricted income, it would be considered non-allowable, and you'd want to enter that here in the table. Expenses, very similar situation. These are the lists of all of the various allowable expenses. There are a lot of them. Again, you would just want to enter in whatever you utilize in your organization. If you don't have educational program expenses, for example, you would just skip that one. And again, we're looking for you to enter the amount for each category and then to have any kind of notes to help us correspond that number or that figure to where it shows up in your financial statement or your audit. And there's just a few non-allowable expenses, including capital expenses, in-kind expenses, any grant making, and depreciation. And again, those would go into this final section here for non-allowable expenses. All right, Emily's going to talk through our first example here of a P&L and how that relates to a financial table.
Great, thanks, Laura. So this is a smaller organization that is under $600,000. So they were not required to provide us with audited financials, but this was a statement that was signed by an authorized fiscal representative of this particular organization. But just for an example, this is what their financial statement, the top half of their income looked like. And I pulled this because it's simplified. And the one thing they did that was really helpful for us is they assigned a line number to each one of their income lines, which will correspond with the financial table. So it goes through line 12. And when we look at the financial table, you can see, again, it's a little bit hard to read here, but you'll see they selected the types of earned income that was applicable to them, put in the amount, and then you'll see in that third column where it says 1, 3, and 4, those are the combined lines from their financial statement over here. So that's the total from those 3 lines were pulled into that first tuition line. You'll see similarly that they went down to sale of goods and they pulled 4 of their lines from their financial statement to put in a total, and so on and so forth. So what we're looking for here was that total of earned income was $70,368.91. If you go back here, you'll see the total here for their income matches that. The totals below are for their contributed income, and you'll see in their table below there were the same income lines. So this was a direct connection. Again, it was really helpful for us to see the numbers, and it correspond perfectly for when we were doing our checks. So essentially, we were checking the table and going back to the financial section to verify that. And it was just a pretty easy way to go. So if you are able to do something similar to this, or add notes or particular ways to identify those income lines within the table, that's really helpful. And I know Laura's got one that's a little bit more complicated here. I'll let you explain that.
Yeah, so sort of a similar idea or principle, but just looking at an audit. This audit used a method of labeling each figure with a letter. So you can see here that it is just very simply handwritten in, nothing too fancy. They labeled each figure with a letter, A, B, C, D, etc. And then this translated really easily into the notes of the financial table. So when the figures, these are really big numbers shown in the audit, but they break down into kind of subcategories within the financial table. So it was very easy to line up the way that those lines of the table corresponded to these figures shown here in the audit. So you'll see in the next slide here, this is just a snapshot of a portion of it, but you can see kind of the breakdown of how they did this. Again, very similar to Emily's example, but the location of the numerical figure in the audit shares that letter, A, B, etc. But you can see, for example, if you look at the B, there's 2 sections that of the table that are corresponding to, if you go back one slide, Emily, going to that one figure that is B on the audit. So it just really helps to show the math, to show how we're getting to these totals. C has multiple portions to it, so that way we're able to really see how they're coming up with those totals and how they're then reflective in the audit versus the table itself. So those clear notes really, really help us to align those figures. So we can go through the audit easily and understand how you're coming up with those different totals. Particularly in audits, there are many different ways that they show up. So anything that you can do to help us understand how you're breaking that information down is really appreciated. You don't have to do these methods. These are just examples, but we have found them to be especially helpful and really efficient in understanding the information. So if this is helpful for you, please feel free to utilize either of these examples to help your organization. And we have just a couple other kind of helpful hints and pointers to share. Like we've said throughout, include those descriptive notes, including a name of a line and a page number wherever where that figure can be found in the audit or a P&L, either way. You know, if you're just saying page 5 all the way down on every single line of the table, that's not super helpful for us. So if you're able to tell us a little bit more information and how to really zero in on it, that's really what is helpful. If a number represents a partial amount of a larger amount or is made up of multiple lines like we showed in those examples, if you can include notes to describe that breakdown, that would be really helpful. Something like this represents $5,000 of $10,000 from the contributions line seen on page 4. Additionally, you know, audits are very long documents oftentimes, and there usually are lots of corresponding notes throughout the audit. So if there is something that would help to explain the information or to give us more details, you might also indicate that on the table, something like see note 9 on page 17. Just generally speaking, we like notes. Include as much information as you can. And you can use the template as a guide before dropping in numbers in the application table. So there is that financial template, which can be found on our website, or you can email myself or Emily, and we're happy to send that along. That is kind of a nice planning tool in case you're trying to work through this with your financial department, or if many people are working on it together. It's a good way to prepare things. And just one quick note about the financial review portion. This is something that it only occurs for the on-year application. So if you're in an off year, you don't need to worry about this for this particular review process. But if you're on that on-year process, in addition to looking at the financial table and lining that up to your financial statement, Emily and I are also responsible for scoring your financials as well. So we look at, there's 3 different points that we are looking at. And that is, the first one is that the financial information indicates a strong commitment to multiple diverse income streams. So that's worth 4 points total. The second is that we look for the organization does not display any significant financial changes. Any significant financial changes are supported with programmatic calls in alignment with the organization's mission and vision. So if there is a big shift, you know, we're looking for the reasoning behind that, how that aligns to your organization's mission and programming overall. And that's also worth 4 points total. And the final portion is only for organizations that are over $600,000. And that's looking at the organization having an operating cash reserve of at least 1 year. And that is also worth 4 points total. And Emily, you want to take us home and talk about how that all comes together in the funding formula?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Actually, I'll go back to the one slide and just note that with that third rubric piece, if you are under $600,000, and we're not looking at your cash reserves, but you would get full points. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear that, that you'll get the full points for that. Additionally, so why we're doing all this is because it boils down to your funding formula, right? So mentioned this at the beginning of this presentation that Laura and I really look at your financials to hone in on the allowable income number to make sure that it's true, it's verified, and we're moving forward with everybody having verified allowable income numbers because it impacts, you know, the whole lot. So again, as a reminder, the funding formula is allowable income multiplied by your panel percentage multiplied by your cap allocation percentage to get your grant award. So again, I just want to hone in that that it's important for you all to provide clear documentation and notes and everything that we've recommended today. Also noting that that financial review is factored into the panel percentage for our on-year folks. So that's that total of 12 points out of 100. So that does impact the panel percentage as well. So just noting that we're here to support you as well. If you've got any questions as you move along, if you want us to review anything, in advance of the application, just as we do with the narrative. We're happy to take a look and walk through some of this with you as well. And as a reminder, the full application, the on-year deadline is November 15th, 2023 by 11:59 p.m. in Smart Simple. Again, if you don't feel like you'll have your audited financial statement ready, if you're over 600,000 in income, please let Laura or myself know in advance of the deadline. Additionally, the off-year application, our shorter truncated application, is due December 15th. Same thing applies if you're looking at submitting your audited financials. Just be in touch with us if you do not think you're going to have it by that deadline, just so we have a heads up. So you're looking for November 15th and December 15th deadlines here. And again, we're here to help. You probably have our email addresses, but here they are again, just in case. You can find it on the program pages as well, along with all those resources. And we'll be adding additional resources to the website as well. We did an information session that was recorded on the 16th of, the 15th of October. That will be posted shortly. We'll also provide slide decks and information as we can. So thank you very much for taking this journey with us.